We've always had mountain lions, bears, coyotes, the kind of wildlife that makes you cautious out there but never afraid. Not really. You carry a whistle, maybe a can of spray. You make noise on the trail, keep your food hung high and your boots by the fire. That's the dance we've all known for decades. A simple rule. You respect the wild, and the wild respects you back. But last October, that agreement broke. My name is Eli Warren. I've been a ranger here in Yosemite for 17 years. I started when I was barely out of college, when I still thought wilderness meant something pure. I came out here chasing silence, something sacred. Over time, you learn to read the woods the way you read a person's face. When the squirrels stop chirping, when the wind shifts, when a trail that's been fine for years suddenly feels off. And when that feeling comes, you listen, or you don't come back. The first time I felt it was October 12th, a routine patrol, lower Hetchy Trail. It was dry, windless. I couldn't hear a single bird, no bugs, even the flies, gone. It was like the forest was holding its breath. I radioed it in, half as a joke. Told dispatch it was too quiet out here. We laughed, but even then, the hairs on my arms wouldn't go down. That evening, I passed a fresh deer carcass about 100 feet off the trail. Its eyes were still open, no bite marks, no struggle in the dirt, just dropped, like it had fainted. But there was no sign of a predator, no blood, no sound. I stayed the night at the old fire watch station up near Smith Ridge. That place hasn't been used officially in years, but it's dry and sometimes it's easier to stay up high when a storm's on the radar. About 3 a.m., I woke up to something pounding the outside wall. Not scratching, not pawing. Pounding. 4 hits, evenly spaced. Then silence. I stepped outside with my light and didn't see anything, but every tree around me felt like it was watching, and I know how that sounds. I went down to check the camera traps the next morning. One of them, Trail Cam 38B, had triggered around 2:52 a.m. The footage was mostly black, except for a few glowing coyote eyes. They were scattered, not running in a group, which they usually do. One coyote stops, looks dead at the camera. Its ears go flat. And then, for about 3 frames, something passes behind it. Not an animal I know. Tall, human-shaped. But the limbs were wrong. The posture too rigid, too still. It didn't walk. It just moved. The footage cut out after that. Just static. That's not normal. These cameras are built to run through snow, rain, even rockfall. But this was like something disrupted the signal itself. Later that week, we got reports from hikers about sounds. 3 whistles, they said. Always 3. From deep in the woods, never closer, never farther, just out of reach. One group described it as a call and response, a whistle in front of them, then 2 more echoing behind. That group cut their trip short, said they didn't feel watched, they felt studied. And that's the thing. It's not just fear, it's precision. These things don't charge, they encircle, they calculate. It's like you're not even prey. You're an experiment. By the 3rd week of October, even the bears had gone scarce. Tracks just stopped appearing. The animals that didn't vanish outright changed patterns. Elk avoiding water sources, birds abandoning entire groves, coyotes refusing to howl. We checked the seismic readings, the water samples, even the weather anomalies. Nothing added up. And then came the first missing person report, a solo backpacker. Name was Graham Fielder, 42, seasoned. Logged his route properly, had food for 5 days, backup gear, and a signal beacon. It went dark on the 2nd night. When we found his tent, it was standing, zipped, food untouched, firewood stacked, but no Graham, no blood, no prints, just his compass, lying perfectly centered on his sleeping bag, needle spinning in every direction but north. That was when we knew we weren't dealing with anything in the usual playbook. I remember driving back to the station that night, looking out over the trees. You know how you get used to the skyline out here? Every hill, every ridge, every dip, you know it by heart. But something was wrong. A new shape, tall, upright, far off on the ridge. I blinked. It was gone. Some of the younger rangers started calling it the Watchers, half joking, half not. They always said the same thing. They come in threes. The pattern kept showing up. 3 missing people. 3 slashes on a ranger's door. 3 knocks on the cabin wall. Always 3. I filed the reports, sent the footage to regional, heard nothing back. Then the cameras started failing. First, the trail cams. Then, the tower feeds. One by one. But only in Zone 7. A part of the forest we'd always thought was just thick, not dangerous. Now, I won't even go out there in daylight without backup. We're not supposed to talk about the recent disappearances. That's what the internal memo said. Do not speculate publicly. Refer all inquiries to Central Dispatch. Log all anomalies as weather-related or terrain-related factors. I remember when that line came through the system, October 26th. Official language, no emotion, just instructions. But we all knew what it meant. Something was happening out there. Something worse than just people getting lost. But see, that's the part they never say out loud. It's not people getting lost. It's people getting taken. I keep a private log, handwritten. I know that's old school, but I don't trust the system anymore. Not after what happened to Ranger Holtz. Jack Holtz had been with the Park Service for 11 years. A solid guy. Never complained. Always logged his routes, trained the seasonal hires, even kept a clean locker, which, around here, says something. But 3 days after submitting an unauthorized report about a large, unidentifiable humanoid figure spotted near Mist Trail, he was put on leave. Administrative review, they called it. For stress-related performance decline. Except Jack wasn't declining. He was scared. And then he stopped answering texts. His cabin, Unit 14, was found empty 2 days later. Light still on. Boots still by the bed. No signs of struggle, no note. Nothing. Except this. On the inside of the back door, carved deep into the wood, were 3 vertical slashes. Clean, deliberate, fresh. They said he resigned. Took an assignment out of state, but his truck's still in the lot. Yosemite isn't what it used to be. You feel it now in the way the animals behave. The deer are migrating too early. The raccoons are abandoning their dens and heading downhill in broad daylight. Owls, usually a constant in the upper canopy, are just gone. No feathers, no sign of molting, just absence. And the sounds. Night used to be a symphony out here, the rustle of leaves, frogs near the creeks, owls calling to each other like distant ghosts. Now, the silence is so thick, it hurts your ears. And every now and then, there's this sound, a clicking, rhythmic, like someone tapping wood together, 3 beats, always 3. Sometimes it comes from deep in the trees, sometimes it's closer than it should be, but no one ever sees what's making it. I've taken calls from hikers who swear they saw something moving through the trees, tall, too pale, arms longer than they should be. They call it a person at first, but the longer they talk, the less certain they sound. One guy, backcountry hiker from Oregon, told me it looked like a man trying to remember how to walk. And then the bodies started showing up. 3 hikers found near the basin east of Tuolumne. Names withheld publicly, but I've seen the reports. No bite marks, no predation behavior, just deep scoring across the torso. Long uniform incisions, nothing like claws, almost surgical. One had his backpack untouched, water full. Knife still sheathed. He never even reached for it. We've had animal attacks before. Bears, cats, Hell, even people on bad trips. You know what that looks like. This wasn't that. This was cleaner. Purposeful. Like whoever, whatever, did it didn't want to eat them, just stop them from leaving. And still, they told us to keep quiet. They started pulling our reports. Anything we flagged as unusual got rerouted to regional oversight. Logged, sealed, scrubbed. I know one ranger, new guy, less than a year in, who got suspended for even suggesting we bring in wildlife biologists, told he was escalating fear. They say it's to protect tourism, but the trails are still open. That's the part I can't get over. People are still walking out there, setting up camp, putting out marshmallows on sticks, and we're still smiling for the photos. I keep wondering what this thing is waiting for. Why it only watches most of the time. Why it comes close and then pulls back. Why the ones who disappear are always the ones traveling alone. Or worse, those who go off trail, even for a moment. I had a hiker ask me the other day if there were wolves out here. I said no. And then he said, funny, because I saw 3 shapes pacing me for 2 hours, just out of sight. Every time I turned, they stopped. I asked him why he didn't run. He looked at me and said, they wanted me to. You're going to see the documents, the footage, the files they redacted, and the night we heard the whistles inside the ranger compound. Subscribe now. This is just the beginning. Chapter 1 is next. And it only gets closer from here. They watch first, then they move. And they always come in 3s. Glacier Point is one of those places you never forget. You stand there and feel like the whole world's breathing below your feet. Tourists love it. It's beautiful, predictable, safe. That's what makes this part so hard to explain. The first report came in on October 18. 2 tourists, Emma and Caleb Jensen, were visiting from Ohio, newlyweds. We checked their permits. Everything was filed properly. Day hike only. Out and back to the overlook. They signed in at the ranger post at 10:12 a.m. Weather was clear. No alerts. They never came back. What threw us off was how normal the trail looked. We dispatched a team around sunset when their car was still parked. No radio from them, no signal from their phones. First thing we found was their backpack, sitting upright at the tree line. No tears. Zippers closed, trail mix still sealed. The kind of stuff animals would have torn into if it had been there long. But it wasn't. About 300 feet deeper into the trees, we found a shoe. Hers. Laces tied. No drag marks. No prints. No indication of struggle. Just placed neatly under a low pine branch. We called for dogs. They circled but wouldn't cross beyond a particular point. Like something had stained the soil invisible. Something they felt, but we couldn't see. That night, our search party camped near the site. I was there. We were 25 feet from where the shoe had been. And that's when we noticed the birds. They'd stopped. No calls, no wing flutters, not even the faint rustling of nocturnal feeders. You don't understand the weight of silence until you're deep in the woods, and the woods stop speaking. One of the searchers, Maria Doss, former firefighter, not the panicky type, stood up in the middle of the night, eyes wide. I asked her what was wrong. She just said, "They're waiting for us to separate." The next morning, we followed a shallow ravine northeast. That's when we found the second pack. His, this time, Caleb's, tucked neatly between 2 rocks, as if placed. Nothing scattered, just offered. That's when the terrain started changing. No animals, no scat, not even insect noise. And the forest felt wrong. Same trees, same elevation. But something off in the angles, like every tree leaned a little too far in. You start questioning your balance, your compass. yourself. We pulled back that afternoon, called in aerial support. But when the drone passed over the trail at dusk, we caught something we weren't expecting. 2 thermal readings. Side by side, human height, upright, standing still. One of them just outside the tree line, the other directly behind one of our team members. By the time we could radio in, it was gone. I went back to Glacier Point that evening. Just me. I stood right where the Jensens had taken a photo earlier that day. Happy, alive, unaware. I remember looking out across the valley and feeling this pressure. Not wind, not weight, just the distinct, crushing awareness that I wasn't alone. I turned around, and there it was. 3 marks in the dirt. Fresh, parallel, straight as if drawn by a machine. The middle one was deepest. I didn't tell anyone that night, I just wrote it down in the log. Page 47 of my private book. October 19th. The birds stopped singing. That's how we knew. The official report says the Jensens likely slipped off trail, maybe fell into a crevice. Happens sometimes, but not like this. You don't leave a backpack, standing upright and a shoe under a tree when you fall. You don't walk away from a trail with full water, GPS, and an open-air sky above you. And you don't disappear without sound, unless something doesn't want you found. There's more. The next disappearance didn't even leave behind gear. Just a voice, captured on a ranger's body cam, whispering from the trees. We'll play that in Chapter 2, but ask yourself this before you watch it. What kind of predator doesn't leave tracks and knows your name before you speak? Subscribe, because every week we bring you closer to the things no one else will talk about. And the next chapter might be your last chance to hear what really happened. They wait, they learn, they choose, and they always come in threes. I've tracked animals in this park for over 14 years. Bears, cougars, coyotes. You learn to read the land like a story. Every broken twig means something. Every print in the soil has weight, pace, direction, intent. But these tracks, these aren't in the books. We first spotted them after the Davis Lake incident. A small patrol was sent out to investigate what we thought was a mountain lion kill. The carcass of a mule deer had been reported by a pair of backpackers, said it looked wrong. They weren't lying. The kill site was quiet. No drag marks, no mess. Just the deer, intact, except for the neck. Snapped, clean, no tear, no bite, and around the body, tracks. At first, we thought maybe bear, but the stride was wrong. Too narrow, too precise. Bears lumber, especially in a kill frenzy. These were placed, measured, like a human walking heel to toe. 4 sets total, 3 of them large. Easily 14-inch prints, elongated but missing an arch. Flat pressure the whole way through. Toes weren't human either. They were long, splayed, ending in defined claw points. Not curved like a cougar or canine, but almost surgical. The 4th set was smaller. Faster gait. That one was erratic. Like it danced or skittered. That's when we called in Dr. Haskins. He's a wildlife biologist out of UC Merced, contracted for seasonal behavior studies, knows this terrain better than most of us. We figured maybe he'd seen something like this. Maybe some mutation, disease, deformity. He took one look at the casts and didn't say a word for a full minute. Then he asked if he could speak off record. He said, "These things are coordinating. That means intelligence." Cut to audio of a field interview. Dr. Haskins, whispering as wind blows through grass in the background. Look at the spacing. These prints are pacing each other, mirroring each other. That's formation behavior. You don't see that outside of wolves, military-trained dogs, or people. But these aren't wolves, and they aren't people. We sent casts to regional. No reply. A week later, the wildlife tracker on Dr. Haskins' truck was removed. Admin claimed he was overstepping his role. His contract wasn't renewed, and then the wolves started leaving. We'd tagged a small gray pack 2 winters ago, 7 members, led by a female we called Rook. They stayed mostly up in the northeastern edges of the park. Predictable range, reliable data. One morning, we checked the telemetry. Gone. The collars were still transmitting, but they were all moving. Fast. Straight line. Southward. Past their usual boundaries, over 30 miles in 2 days. That's not migration. That's evacuation. 2 weeks later, we stopped picking them up altogether. And then, the deer vanished. Not dwindled. Vanished. Entire zones where we'd counted over 200 head last spring were empty. No tracks, no scat, no remains. Just open meadow and the sound of nothing. You ever step into a place that feels like it's holding its breath? Like the trees are trying not to draw attention to themselves? That's how Zone 7 feels now. We kept patrolling, but the longer we stayed out there, the worse it got. Radios started glitching. Lines would go dead without warning. Batteries drained faster than they should. And then came the mimicry. It started with our own voices. One ranger, Manny Ruiz, radioed back that he'd heard someone shouting his name. He thought it was me. Said it sounded exact. Same cadence, same inflection. Only I wasn't anywhere near him. I hadn't spoken on open channel for over an hour. Then the same happened to me. I was sweeping the upper ridgeline near Chilnualna Falls. Wind picked up, trees creaking, and then I heard it. A voice, my voice, somewhere in the brush, saying, "Over here." Twice, identical each time, same tone, same pause, like a recording. We're not dealing with an animal. We're dealing with something that learns, something that listens, something that hunts, not for food, but for advantage. The tracks are still there, if you know where to look, but what matters now is what they lead to. Because one of our teams followed them further than we were supposed to, and only one ranger came back. In Chapter 3, you'll hear the recovered body cam audio from that mission. You'll hear what stopped them from running, and what followed them home. Subscribe now. Because after Chapter 3, you may never hear birdsong in the same way again. They leave tracks not to chase you, but to show you they're close. I wasn't there the night they went missing, but I saw the aftermath, and I listened to the audio, all of it. That's how I know it was the first time they attacked us directly. We'd sent out a 3-man patrol into Zone 9, that southeast quadrant, just beyond the Merced Grove. It's remote, steep canyons, deep pines, hard to access, even harder to communicate in. That's why we'd usually double up the patrols there. But it was a quiet season, or it had been. The team was comprised of Rangers Kyle Mercer, Dominic Cho, and Sarah Bell. All experienced, all level-headed. They knew the terrain, they knew the risks. They had been briefed on the strange sightings, kept the reports close to their vests, but they knew. Still, none of us were prepared. Their last check-in came at 19:04 hours. Sarah's voice, calm, routine. Trail clear, no movement, temps dropping fast. May head back early, radios getting scratchy. That was it. We tried to reach them at 2000 hours. Nothing. No reply. 2100, still nothing. By 2230, we'd scrambled a secondary team from Station 5. I was part of that crew. We moved fast. The weather was clear, the moon was up. But when we reached the coordinates, it didn't feel like Zone 9. It felt colder. The kind of cold that sinks into your chest, even when the air's still. We found the first sign near a deadfall about 40 yards from the main trail. Sarah's flashlight, still on, propped against a root. It was pointed toward the trees like someone had set it down to illuminate something. But there was nothing there. Then we found the recorder. They weren't supposed to be running a body cam, but Kyle had apparently brought one on his own. Maybe he sensed something. Maybe he didn't trust the silence. The footage was corrupted. Static broke it every few seconds, but the audio played clean. Dominic. Something's following. I heard it. Left flank. 20 yards, maybe. Kyle. You sure? Dominic. Yeah, no steps, just breathing. Heavy. Sarah. Shh. Do you hear that? Kyle, softly. That's not a bird. Sarah, shaking. It's mimicking us. That was the last anyone heard from her. We swept the area for 5 hours. Nothing. No bodies, no gear, no signs of struggle, just bare ground as if the Mindfuel. They'd been lifted out of the trees themselves. Then, at 0417 hours, our team heard movement about 60 feet down slope. We followed it, flashlights sweeping through dense fog. Then we saw it. Something crouched inside a hollow tree. It was Dominic, clothes torn, face covered in dried blood that didn't look like his, mud up to his elbows. He didn't run when he saw us. He didn't even react. He just whispered. It wasn't one animal. It was several. And they took turns. Like they were playing. We medevaced him to base. He was hypothermic, dehydrated. No visible wounds, but he wouldn't stop trembling. He wouldn't tell us what happened to the others. He just kept repeating the same phrase over and over. They watched first. For hours. Then they started. They never made a sound. They took turns. That night, the recording was pulled from our files. Admin said the camera had been damaged in the field. They said the audio was fabricated, that we were dramatizing trauma. But I kept a copy, and what the admin didn't know was that Kyle had uploaded part of it to a private cloud before they left. It had a file name, just one word, Whistler. Since that night, 4 more rangers have requested transfers. 2 went dark. One's in psychiatric hold at Modesto General. They're not talking either. We weren't the apex out there. We never were. We just didn't know something else was watching, waiting. You heard the whistle. So did they. In Chapter 4, you'll hear it again, closer. And this time, there's video. Subscribe. Because what happens in the next chapter was never supposed to reach the public. The attack wasn't the end. It was an invitation. You can tell a lot about a predator by the way it kills. Bears crush, wolves tear, cougars puncture. The method tells the story, tells you what you're dealing with. But what we found east of Tuolumne Ridge didn't match anything. We received the call early, just after dawn. A wildlife photographer, licensed, experienced, had come across the body of a mountain lion. She was a female, healthy, tag number 1087. We'd been tracking her for 3 seasons. She was apex, no threat above her in this range, until something opened her like a box. She was laid out in a pine clearing, no drag marks, no defensive wounds. Her skull was untouched, but her spine had been split, not broken, split. From between the shoulder blades down to the tail, like someone, or something, had inserted 2 blades and pulled them apart. Her ribs had been bent outward. Her organs were missing, not eaten, but removed, placed beside her in a semicircle. The claw marks weren't consistent with another cat. The bite radius measured across the vertebrae, 4.9 inches, no overlap. That's bigger than any wolf, bigger than a black bear, but too clean, too mechanical. We brought in a state-level wildlife forensics team. They ran tissue analysis, bite mold comparisons, and even pressure depth analysis on the surrounding brush. Their report came back, redacted. We weren't even given a summary. Just a call. Don't pursue further. This is under jurisdiction review. That was the same night the eyes appeared. Station 3 had just begun testing new motion-triggered night cam rigs with thermal range. They were meant for tracking bear populations, mounted at treetop height, facing downslope toward game paths. At 3:12 a.m., one of those cameras triggered on its own. There was no wind, no animals passing through, just a ridge, a slope of rock, moonlight and shadow, then 3 lights, glowing, faint at first, like mist reflecting infrared. Then they moved. 3 orbs, triangle formation, too low to be drones, no blinking, no spread, and they didn't float. They crept. The shape moved as one, low to the ground, purposeful, like it was crawling or stalking. One of our techs enhanced the thermal layer. You could see it clearer then, a form hunched and shifting. The lights weren't hovering, they were embedded. Eyes, triangular pattern, one high, 2 low, off angle, like whatever this was, didn't have a face the way we think of faces. We tried running it against known species, reptilian, avian, feline. Nothing matched. One of the analysts, a former Army recon drone operator, said something I haven't forgotten. This isn't a creature avoiding the camera. It's measuring the camera. The footage ended suddenly, cut to black at 3:18. Just before the last frame, the figure turned, facing directly toward the lens. And for 1/10 of a second, all 3 eyes widened simultaneously, like it knew it was being watched. We returned to the site that morning. No tracks, no damage, but one of the nearby trail cams, non-thermal, motion-based, had also been triggered, and it caught audio. Just 10 seconds. Then a voice, human, faint, in the distance. Run. We never identified who said it. No hikers were registered in that zone at that hour. A week later, another carcass was found. This time, a wolf, male, pack leader, same spinal tear, same surgical display. Only this time, there were 2 sets of claw marks, one wide, deep, the other finer, scalpel-like. Whatever did it wasn't hunting for food. It was eliminating the competition. A mountain lion's dead. A wolf alpha's been opened like a specimen. And something in those woods is watching your cameras, measuring your movement, and making sure you don't find what it doesn't want you to see. In Chapter 5, a civilian hiker returns with footage he shouldn't have captured, and something that followed him back to his car. Subscribe now, because what's coming isn't just a predator, it's something else entirely, and it's never alone. There's a place north of Cascade Creek we don't patrol anymore. We never made that decision officially, no memo, no radio directive, but we all stopped going, one by one. The wildlife stopped first, and when they did, we started noticing what they were avoiding. It was Rainer Melissa Hartman who first called it the Hollow. She'd been on solo patrol out near an unmarked game trail, 2 ridges west of the old Firewatch site. She noticed something strange in the way the birds were flying. Erratic, wide circles, but never landing. Just hovering above a specific cluster of trees, like they were avoiding something below. That patch of forest didn't look any different at first, but the moment she crossed in, she said the air changed. Thicker. Still. Every sound seemed to fall away. The insects, the birds, the distant creak of wood you'd normally hear in a forest. Gone. She walked 50 yards before she stopped. Everything around her, moss, bark, leaf litter, it was all dead. Not just dried out, not decaying, just void. She marked the GPS and returned. The next day, we sent a team of 4 in with her to verify. I was part of that team. We didn't make it 50 yards before we found the first pile of bones. They weren't buried. They weren't scattered. They were stacked. Intentionally. Bird skulls, rodents, something canine. All aligned the same direction, facing west. We kept pushing in. That's when Dominic, same ranger from the attack near Tuolumne, pointed out the trail beneath the root systems. He'd seen it before. A slope, partially hidden by a fallen pine. And below that, a hollowed-out section of soil. Maybe, once, dug by a bear. But it had been widened, much wider. We crawled in, one by one, 5 meters deep. 10. That's when we saw the walls. Claw marks, smooth at first, repetitive, but then more chaotic. Deep gouges, some wide like a hand, some narrow and deep like knives. Then the stone. On one side of the den was a flat rock, almost like an altar. The surface had been etched, deliberately, not scratched at random. Symbols, circular, interwoven. Some resembled eyes, others spirals, not unlike the path of a predator stalking something over time. One mark stood out, 3 lines intersecting at a point. Always that triangle again. Always 3. We set a recording device down and left it overnight. Standard issue trail mic, motion activated, weatherproof. We returned the next morning. The recorder was still there, untouched, but the trees around it had changed. Bark peeled back. Small bones arranged in a new pattern at the den's entrance. 3 rows, each one shorter than the last, like footprints in reverse. We took the device back to Station 3 and played the audio. There was nothing for the first few hours. Then, around 2:11 a.m., the first sound. One voice is clearer than the others. Not words, exactly, just a rhythm. 1, 2, back. 1, 2, back. Then silence. Then scratching. Not like claws on wood. Like something dragging nails across stone. Then another breath. Then a sound none of us have been able to identify. We forwarded the file to Wildlife Operations in Sacramento. No response. The den has since collapsed or been buried. We don't know which. We tried to revisit the area 2 weeks later, but the forest wouldn't let us. Our GPS scrambled. Paths curved into themselves. Trees we marked were gone. And every animal track led around the zone. Like they knew better. Something lives beneath Yosemite now, and it's claimed its territory. The predators won't go near it. The rangers won't return. And the whispers caught inside that den? They weren't alone. In Chapter 6, a backcountry camper vanishes after a disturbing 911 call from inside the park, and the final words he left behind tell us exactly what he saw. Subscribe now. Because the next disappearance isn't just unexplainable. It was foretold. You don't think much of black SUVs until they come up the fire road without calling ahead. 3 of them. No markings on the sides, but they all bore one thing on the back: wildlife disease control. Problem was, we'd never heard of that division. Not in the National Park Service, not in U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And these guys weren't carrying medical kits. They arrived in full gear, vests, radio-locked sidearms. One of them was carrying what looked like a suppressed carbine. Military issue. No badges, no names. They didn't introduce themselves, just flashed laminated IDs at the front desk and asked for access to the den logs. And then they asked who'd been in Zone Theta. We'd never heard it called that. To us, it was just the Hollow. They left with our trail cam hard drives, 4 audio recordings, and 1 field journal from Ranger Hartman. They didn't offer explanations, didn't ask for signatures. They told us to stop patrolling the area for the next 72 hours due to avian viral vector containment. Except we didn't see a single hazmat suit, no decontamination protocols, just rifles, jammers, and eyes that never stopped scanning the tree line. One of the techs, new guy, Tempire, got curious, tried to sneak a photo of their trucks. He didn't even get the lens cap off before one of them was in his face. They took his phone, held him for nearly an hour, told him that if he wanted to stay with the department, he'd delete everything and keep his mouth shut. He resigned 2 days later, didn't even pick up his last paycheck. That's when I called Jacob, former ranger, retired last year. Was on the early discovery team when the first mauled animals showed up near Glacier Point. He didn't hesitate when I asked what was going on. They're not tracking it anymore, he said. They're clearing a threat. According to Jacob, These weren't disease agents. They were private contractors under a joint agency umbrella, one of those multi-initial groups we don't get briefed on. When I was still on duty, he told me, we were told to mark sightings, but not engage. That changed after the first private team went in. A small group, mostly ex-military search specialists, hired to enter the hollow during daylight. They were given full satellite relay, tactical support, heat sensors. They never came back. No distress call, no flares, just a silent disconnect at 2:03 p.m. When the drones were sent in the next morning, they found the team's comm gear in a clearing, neatly stacked. Every radio stripped of its battery. The soil around it was undisturbed, as if someone, or something, had removed the equipment, arranged it, and walked away without leaving a trace. The report never made it to our chain of command. Jacob only saw it because one of his buddies in the Forest Service leaked a satellite shot. 6 human heat signatures, blinking out, one by one. Shortly after that, a new zone appeared on our digital maps. Encrypted, labeled in gray. Restricted, no entry, federal oversight. Never seen that before in a national park. Never heard of it happening without a public statement. And yet, no press, no news articles, no alerts. Just 3 SUVs parked outside the visitor station. Silent, watching. Even now, we don't know if they ever left. Sometimes, when we take the fire road late at night, we still see tire impressions leading out into the deep woods, places we're not allowed to patrol anymore. And sometimes, when the wind dies down, we hear short bursts of static on the ranger band, not from us, but from someone else, transmitting coordinates we're not supposed to have. This isn't a rescue operation. This isn't a cleanup, and it sure as hell isn't about wildlife disease. Someone authorized a response to a threat inside Yosemite National Park, and now they're doing everything they can to keep it silent. In Chapter 7, we recover one of the last surviving trail cameras from Zone Theta, and what it captured explains why those contractors never came back. Subscribe now. What you're watching isn't science fiction. It's Ranger history we were told to forget. And the next chapter reveals what happens when you break the silence. There's something about the trees here. Something you don't notice until you realize they're too quiet. You tell yourself it's just the wind, the elevation, maybe some pressure shift in your ears. But that's not what it is. It's the canopy watching you. And if you're unlucky enough to catch them looking back, you don't forget it. It was Ranger Scott Jensen who first saw them move. Jensen's one of the older guys, 22 years on the ground, 2 tours before that. Calm, rational, zero nonsense. He'd been called out to follow up on movement detected along the west perimeter of Zone Theta. Motion sensors had pinged 3 separate times within 90 minutes. Problem was, there were no tracks, no heat signatures. Just the sensors going dark, one after the other. Jensen took a camcorder, his own, old mini DV thing he'd used to record lightning storms over Cathedral Peak. Said it captured better at night than the newer digital stuff. He reached the first ping site at dusk. Quiet. Still. But then he looked up. They weren't in the trees, he said later, barely able to hold the coffee cup in his hand. They were the trees. He described 3 figures, human-shaped, but too thin. Elongated arms, no visible face at first. They moved, not across the ground, but between the branches, leaping, swinging, without breaking a single limb. And they didn't just move fast. They moved in perfect silence. No rustle, no crack, just shape to shape, figure to figure. All 3 staying equal distance from him at all times, like shadows orbiting their prey. That's when he turned the camcorder on, and that's the last time anyone heard from him over radio. We found the camcorder 2 days later, sitting neatly at the base of a sequoia tree. No blood, no boot prints, just the device. It had 16 minutes of footage. The first few show the forest floor. Normal night vision, wind, leaves, then movement, up high. 3 shapes, darting, pausing, watching. Then the footage shifts. Jensen enters a narrow ravine, natural cave structure near Taft Point. He pans the camera up. Slowly, there, clinging to the ceiling, perfectly still, is a figure. Limbs wrapped backward around the stone, skin taut, gray, motionless, eyes reflecting infrared like a cat's. But 3 of them, forming a triangle. Then, suddenly, it grins. A human mouth, but stretched too wide, teeth too flat, like something imitating us, not knowing what we're supposed to look like. Then it moves. One moment it's still. The next, it lunges straight for the camera. The screen cuts to black at the exact frame its hand or claw or whatever it had reaches forward. We never found Jensen. No body, no gear, not even his flashlight. Just the camcorder. And the tree it was sitting beneath. It had 3 vertical scratches down the side, each exactly 7 inches apart. Something is watching from the trees. It doesn't stalk the way predators do. It plays, it waits. And then it takes you, without sound, without struggle, without leaving anything behind but silence. In Chapter 8, we gain access to a redacted transcript, recorded during an off-grid ranger debrief, where one survivor recalls the creature mimicking human speech, whispering back their own names. Subscribe now, and don't forget to turn on notifications. This story doesn't fade with the light. It follows the ones who listen too long. You can ignore stories. You can ignore sounds in the trees, stacked bones, mutilated carcasses. But what you can't ignore, what none of them could ignore, was the sample. The part they didn't mean to leave behind. It was a wildlife specialist named Dr. Rowan Kessler who found it. Contracted to the park for a seasonal migration study on the dwindling wolf packs. But what she discovered had nothing to do with wolves. She was working just outside the border of what we now call Zone Theta, tagging nocturnal scat piles and laying pheromone trails to monitor behavior. That's when she found it, clinging to a broken branch high in a canopy wedge near Mariposa Grove. A clump of tissue, not fur, not skin, something in between. Dark, fibrous, veined with something that pulsed when it warmed in her hand. That part, she didn't tell anyone, not officially. What she did tell me, off record and only once, was this. It had follicles, like hair, but the follicles were breathing. Like it didn't want to die, like it knew it was separate now. She logged it as malformed bat tissue and sent it out for private sequencing. Not to the Park Service lab, to a university partner in Colorado she trusted. She even marked the shipment as deer placenta to get past inspection. 4 days later, I got a call. Her voice was shaking, not scared, not confused, shaking. It's not just new, she said. It shouldn't be. The initial genome scan showed cross-species splicing across 3 phyla. Canine, primate, unknown, and not ancestral unknown, like some jungle cat no one's cataloged yet. This was something that hadn't split from anything. It shared markers with both wolves and early hominids, but it didn't descend from them. It branched sideways, and somehow, it was still adapting. Worse than that, though, they ran neural stain tests, just to see what regions of the tissue reacted to electricity. It lit up. The sample showed complex synaptic activity, not just movement reflexes, patterns, something about group mimicry, environmental response, shared reaction to pheromonal signals. The lab ran one more test. They exposed the tissue to a looped sound sample, a recording of wolves howling from the Yosemite Ridge. The tissue twitched. The next morning, the lab was gone. A fire broke out just after 3 a.m. chemical in origin. Heat signatures consistent with magnesium oxide. Burns clean and fast. 4 faculty researchers lost. No cause ever officially determined. The data servers were unrecoverable. The sequencing charts? Lost. Equipment? Melted. They claimed faulty wiring. But I've seen the blueprints. That part of the building didn't have electrical lines. It was converted storage. Only power was from temporary battery backups. Dr. Kessler disappeared within the week. No forwarding address, no goodbye. Her apartment was emptied, lease broken by an unnamed third party. The only thing she left behind was a voicemail. I thought it was part of the food chain. I thought it was below us. But it's not. It's something else, and it's watching how we respond. We always believed we were at the top, the apex, the thinker, the hunter. This DNA proves we may not even be in control of the ecosystem anymore. And the moment we identified it, something burned the truth out of existence. In Chapter 9, we track down the one surviving research intern who saw the sequencing data before the fire. And what she claims the model predicted next matches something already spotted inside Zone Theta. Subscribe now. These creatures aren't evolving. They're remembering. And the forest? The forest isn't silent. It's studying us back. There's a phrase they teach you when you first go into wilderness patrol. If the land goes quiet, listen harder. Because silence in the wild doesn't mean peace. It means something is near that even nature won't acknowledge. I didn't believe that phrase meant anything until the night I got the call from Ranger Celeste Molina. It came in as a standard perimeter ping, but the tone of her voice was wrong. Too steady, too flat, like she was trying not to breathe too loud. She was deep south of Mount Star King, inside a valley that hadn't seen foot traffic in over 15 years. No trails, no maps. The last time it was surveyed, the team logged a single line in the record. Dense fungal overgrowth. Unexplored. A void. She wasn't even supposed to be there. She said the GPS had rerouted her, twice. What she found should have never existed above ground. I thought it was a clearing, she said. But the moss was breathing. She found a nest. Do you understand what that means? Not a den, not a burrow, not a hole in a tree full of leaves. An engineered nest. 37 separate sacs. Soft, membrane-like. Pulsating slowly beneath layers of wet moss, bark, and hair. Some human, some not. She got close to one. Close enough to see something shift inside it. Something with limbs and teeth. Then she saw them. 3 adults. Standing in a triangle around the nest. Motionless at first. Like guards. But then they began to move. Not toward her. Toward the sacks. And then, one by one, they crouched low to the moss and began demonstrating movement. Silent steps. Shoulder angles. How to vanish behind bark without disturbing the lichen. They were teaching them, Eli. Like parents or soldiers. This isn't a predator. It's a culture. That was the last thing she said before her radio cut. First static, then a low groan, metallic, layered, like a broken siren run backward. Then something else, something no one in dispatch had ever heard before. A high-pitched screech, not human, not animal. A frequency that pierced the transmission, flattened the gain, and forced the line to shut down automatically. We found her truck 3 days later. Doors open, lights still on. No Celeste, just moss on the floorboards, and something clawed into the dashboard plastic, as if by hand. 33 hatched. We never recorded her coordinates. She never wrote them down. That part of the forest, wherever she went, it doesn't show up on any ranger maps anymore. It's been overwritten. You thought this was a creature. You thought this was a rogue species, something to track or contain. It's not. It's a colony, a network. And now, it's expanding. In Chapter 10, we access leaked drone footage captured 2 nights after Celeste's call. Footage that shows multiple nests, not scattered randomly, arranged in a spiral, a pattern seen before in swarm biology, and ancient indigenous carvings on the valley's stone walls. Subscribe now, turn on notifications. This isn't a single horror story, this is an origin point, and it's still spreading. The lies didn't start big, they started with signs, and when you've worked Yosemite long enough, you learn what the signs mean, especially when they go up overnight. Area closed due to wildfire risk. Except there was no smoke, no burn permits, and not a single fire tower reported a heat bloom for over 50 miles. What the satellite images did show, if you knew where to look, was a darker shape spreading through the upper canopies near Illilouette Basin. You could see it from infrared. Dense, cold, patterned, like overlapping shadows. Some kind of nest structure in the trees themselves. But to the public, just a seasonal hazard. Then came the video. A tourist, young, probably mid-20s. Account handle Trail Ghost 87. He posted a short TikTok at 2:13 a.m., time-stamped from near Sentinel Dome. Shot handheld, bad resolution, frantic angle. The caption was simple. We're being followed. It's tall. It's fast. The clip ran only 7 seconds before it was pulled. We downloaded it. But not before TikTok issued a takedown citing community guidelines violation, violent content. Here's what we saw. 2 hikers panting, whispering into the camera. Leaves rustling, unnaturally synchronized. Then, frame by frame, a sliver of motion in the background. Tall, thin, pale. Arms longer than they should be. Eyes reflecting, not like an animal, but like glass catching street light. One step, then another, then gone. That video didn't go viral. It vanished. Even re-uploads got flagged, auto-muted, accounts shadow banned. 2 days later, the original poster's entire account was deleted. Same week, I saw the internal memo, not sent through the usual system. Hand-delivered. Paper. No trace. Effective immediately. All non-essential personnel are to evacuate via the south entrance. Do not engage if circled. Hold breath. Stay low. If approached, show no recognition. If circled. That line stuck with me. It confirmed what we'd only whispered. They don't just hunt, they test. Another ranger, Jared Lindsay, told me he witnessed it firsthand. He was on a solo sweep near Wawona Tunnel, said he saw movement, flashed his light, and froze. 3 of them. Perfectly still. Not growling, not advancing, just watching. They moved only when he tried to leave, and each time they repositioned. One behind, one beside, one in front. As if they were waiting for a signal he didn't know how to give. It felt like a test, Jared whispered, like they wanted to see how I'd respond to fear. He made it out, but not untouched. His boots were cut open at the heel. Something sliced through them with surgical precision. No blood, just contact, just a reminder. They're not just stalking the forest anymore. They're watching how we organize, how we react, what we're told. The closures are real, but the reasons are manufactured. In Chapter 11, we track down a hiker who got out just before the trail shutdowns, who says he followed something into a ravine and found an object not of the forest, but carved like it belonged there. A marker, or a shrine. And it's not empty. Subscribe and stay alert. The forest is being silenced because something inside it has started making rules. There's a rhythm to storms in Yosemite. They don't sneak up on you. You hear them crawl in from the range, smell them miles away in the static and pine. They crack open the sky, and for a few moments everything feels cleaner, reckless, loud. That's not what this storm was. July 18th, 3:42 a.m. The east quadrant of the park went completely dark. No warning, no gradual surge drop, just black. Ranger Tower 9, our highest elevation outpost, was the first to report the pressure drop. Barometric readings dropped 14 points in under 2 minutes. That's enough to make your nose bleed, or your ears ring, or your judgment crack, just a little. Then came the lightning. It didn't strike like normal. It struck in pulses, repeating locations, deliberate. 3 flashes, pause, 3 again. Always in the same arc pattern across the valley rim. Our satellite relays overloaded. Weather station power grids popped, and the park's eastern surveillance, our last working thermal monitors, went offline. And that's when the calls began. Over a dozen emergency pings from backcountry campers came through in the next 20 minutes. Most never completed transmission, but some were recorded. Something outside the tent. It's tall, sniffing. We saw 3 shadows moving, with the lightning not after it. The trees are moving. I don't mean swaying, I mean moving. We tried to dispatch runners, but the back roads were flooded. Then came the final radio message from Tower 9. That's the last full transmission anyone received from Ranger Kevin Brannick. I see them. They're circling the lookout. They wait for the flashes. They move during the thunder. They're using the dark. They're here. The tower's beacon light shorted out immediately after. Neither Brannick nor the tower's interior footage was ever recovered. But a fire crew dispatched at dawn found the following. Steel bolts in the tower steps had been unscrewed from the outside. The emergency generator cables had been cut, not torn. The radio antenna? Bent downward, as if forced by something hanging from above. There were no claw marks, no blood, no prints, just one piece of rope looped around the central beam. It had been braided with fur, human-length hair, and something else, coarse, gray, unknown. Light, we'd come to realize, was a kind of cover. They didn't fear it. They just knew how to work around it, use its rhythm, synchronize their movement to thunderclaps like cover fire, like they'd rehearsed. This wasn't just a night without power. It was a test of our response time, how long it takes to lose the grid, how long it takes to isolate a ranger tower, how long it takes for help to never arrive. In Chapter 12, The Lost Valley Map, we uncover a trail map never published, one that shows a section of the park that predates the ranger system entirely. A location once marked cursed ground by native scouts, and recently uncovered in soil samples beneath the dens. Subscribe. And if you're watching from anywhere near the Sierra Nevadas, watch the skies the next time the lightning rolls in. It may not be there to start a fire. It may just be timing something. If you find this, if it even gets out of here, don't send more people. They won't make it. He exhales, slow, controlled. This isn't a park anymore. It's a perimeter. I've been hiding in a supply cabin 4 clicks east of Wawona Ridge, the one with the busted antenna and broken chimney, the one they don't come near, yet. No generator, no heat, just walls that groan in the wind and a deadbolt that only works from the inside. I haven't used a flashlight in 72 hours. I don't light fires anymore. They see light as a signal. They respond. Every ranger is gone. Every tower's been taken. Even the air feel thinner. They don't kill like predators. They don't feed. They just take what crosses their lines. One step too deep, one sound too close. You're gone. I thought at first it was territorial, that it was defensive. But he pauses. You hear the wood creak, then silence. They don't behave like anything on Earth. Not wolves, not primates. Something else, something aware, something patient. They move in formations. They mark trees with fibers and bone. They mimic sound. At first, just the wind. But then voices. I heard Brannick's voice 2 nights ago. But Brannick's dead. They don't just stalk anymore. They lure. This forest, it doesn't belong to us anymore. It never did. We carved roads and trails and fire lines, but beneath that, beneath all of it, there was already a system here, a chain of ownership, and we broke it. Another pause, longer. Warren's breath begins to shake faintly. If you're hearing this, tell the families it wasn't their fault. Tell the new recruits, don't volunteer for night patrols. Tell the world. He stops. Outside the cabin, faint sound, a knock, 3 knocks, slow, even. Not hard enough to break the wood, just enough to let you know. It knows where you are. Warren, quiet, nearly whispering, "It found me, and it's not alone." Audio crackles, then silence, then end of transmission. The cabin was discovered 10 days later. No body, no blood, just the recorder, still warm, and the door, never broken, just left ajar. Inside, on the wall, a drawing made in ash and sap. 3 marks, interlinked, circular, primitive, intentional. Some believe it's a warning, others say it's a claim. This concludes the known ranger files. But disappearances continue. Unexplained noises still echo from unpatrolled areas, and new drone footage has surfaced showing strange movement through Glacier Gorge during a clear, moonless night. There is no official investigation, no federal statements, only silence. If you're watching this, you know the difference between what's said and what's real. Subscribe. Return for the unreleased drone footage recovered last month. Footage allegedly showing the pack den from the air. If the footage is real, then Yosemite may not be a national park anymore. It might just be a boundary. For years, the disappearances were scattered, explained away as weather, misadventure, animal attacks. And the park stayed open, the trails stayed busy, the budget stayed intact. Then, in the final hour of our research, something surfaced. A whistleblower. He didn't give his name, didn't want his voice heard, but what he shared was real. A sealed Department of Interior file labeled Predatory Group Species X17 Yosemite Cluster, dated March 6th, 2011. Classification, Level 4, Unverified Biological Hazard. The document references a sighting log that spans over 2 decades. The earliest confirmed encounter? October 1994. Scouts near Tenaya Lake reported hearing their own voices echoed back to them in perfect cadence. The echoes weren't delayed. They were anticipated, as if something had learned the rhythm of human conversation. From the same file, 3 entities observed moving in synchronicity. Estimated height, 7 to 8 feet. No visible fur. Limbs elongated. Able to transition between bipedal and quadrupedal movement. Coordinated kill patterns confirmed in 3 separate incidents. No signs of feeding. Targets included wolves, mountain cats, and humans. One agent's handwritten margin note reads, Y3s, pack logic, hive brain, or is it ritual? And then comes the photo. It was attached to the final appendix of the file, grainy, blurred by fog, shot on a trail cam in April of 2009. No location tags, only the timestamp and what stands in the mist. 3 figures, tall, still, barely visible except for the faintest reflection. 3 glowing eyes, arranged in a triangle on each face. The image wasn't enhanced. It wasn't published. It wasn't even meant to be seen. Yet here it is, because someone on the inside knew it would happen again. And they knew the pattern had restarted. These aren't campfire stories. They're redacted truths with just enough light to slip through the cracks. What we've shown you is only the surface. There are more files, more photos, more silence in the margins of government maps. Subscribe, because what comes next isn't a sighting, it's a migration. Yosemite's south entrance remains sealed, officially elevated fire risk, except there are no fires, no smoke plumes, no weather patterns to justify it. Satellite thermal data? Flatline. Just vast stretches of forest that go darker, longer, and more often than they ever have before. Tour groups are rerouted without explanation. Backcountry permits are denied without cause. Cameras are turned off at night. Even the rangers, the few that remain, don't camp beyond the mark zone anymore. The fire closures continue, but nothing's burning. Not above ground, anyway. I used to say nature was peaceful. That quiet meant safety. Birds singing, branches creaking, those were just signs the forest was alive. But the truth is, when the forest goes too quiet, when the wind stops and even the insects hold still, that's when you need to run. This isn't over. There are still missing hikers whose names never made the news. Still night cam footage pulled before it could upload. Still whispers in ranger stations that don't make it into the incident logs. And that photo, the one from 2009, it wasn't the last. We've seen new footage. Something from just 2 weeks ago. Same eyes, same fog, same number. You've made it this far. You've seen the signs, you've heard the voices. Subscribe, share this, and stay with us, because there's more.